the failure still happens, right? I mean, 2009, 10 hit. It's the Great Recession. Overnight, I lost clients, I lost accounts, people went bankrupt, and so overnight, I go from being this highfalutin entrepreneur, wearing a suit, driving this luxury car, in church, telling people, "Hey, be like me," giving testimonies in church about my business success, right? Because I had baptized my workaholism, right? I had baptized my ego.
Welcome to A Theology of Hustle. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, and follow me at Theology of Hustle on Instagram. Now, let's get to work. All right. Well, I can't wait for y'all to hear from my good friend, Adrian Parker. Adrian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother Curry. This is my brother from another mother for sure. Excited to be on Theology of Hustle podcast. Long time listener, and so very amped about this opportunity.
I've been excited about this for a long time. Just like I would love to delve into Adrian's story of work, and I've talked to all these people that have these interesting histories, and you, my friend, are definitely one with a great history. So great story.
Oh, honored. Well, hey, the feeling is more than mutual. I just listened to the recent one you did with Shane. I mean, just amazing stuff. And so if anybody's just listening to this for the first time, hey, you got to go back and listen to some of Curry's greatest hits. I mean, this guy has talked to people who are really, I think, luminaries and giants in different fields, especially theology. So yeah, man, big shoes to fill. So I hope I don't disappoint.
I appreciate that. And always the marketer. I love the shout out. That's what you do, man. It's good stuff.
Old habits die hard.
Facts. All right. So let's kick it off and just let's do the quick bio. Kind of who is Adrian?
Yeah, man. So I'm a husband to an amazingly patient former teacher, Alicia Parker, who I'd say I'm probably the fourth kid half the time. A dad to Caleb, Chloe, and Chandler, my little life coaches who every day are teaching me something new. And I'm a son. I'm a son of one of the first African Americans to graduate from Texas Tech University, the engineering school, who is also in ministry. So my dad, Reverend Parker, is a minister. I'm a grandson of a sharecropper who became a agricultural scientist. And so I've always grown up with this instinct for education and hustle and work and, how you provide for your family. So occupationally, I'm the president at Uncle Nearest Incorporated. Uncle Nearest is the fastest growing American whiskey and bourbon brand in the United States. And so I'm launching a new division to bring the best of kind of French spirits to the American consumer. And so that's been an amazing journey for these last 2 years occupationally. But, overall, I mean, I've had a 20 plus now year career in marketing, advertising, and building brands. And so when I started out, I had hair, but I've sold anything from Apple iPhones to, Nike sneakers to Kate Spade cardigans to RadioShack connectors to tax software. So I've marketed, led, and failed in a lot of different ways. And vocationally, I'd say, I'm a writer who wants to be an author. I'm a minister to God's people, newly ordained minister.
That's
so
right.
I work alongside my brother Curry here at the Well Church in Keller. So I'm a newly ordained minister to God's people who wants to stay a student to God's word. And I'm also a speaker who really wants to leave a legacy. And so, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. Is, if you're an Enneagram specialist, you can already tell, a brother dibs and dabs in a lot of different things. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to kind of have this journey and be able to unpack it with you today.
I love it. That's awesome. I really do want to kind of walk through your story because I assume, back in the day when you were much younger, you weren't thinking, hey, I want to be in marketing and be a marketing executive someday. So can we just start like the early years of Adrian? How did you grow up? What did that look like?
Oh, yeah, man. I'd say my career actually started on a stage. I grew up, I was always creative. So I'm one of 6 kids. So the Parker family, is deep. We grew up with one of those wood grain station wagons, where all the kids just paw in the back, no seatbelts on, just doing our thing. And so I always grew up wanting to be in theater and acting. So I was in, monologues. I wrote plays. I was in Shakespeare, Taming of the Shrew, Midsummer Night's Dream. But then my dad set me down one day and said, "Hey, in theater and acting, you're not going to make any money." So, okay. In my head at that time, probably middle to high school, the grown up version of acting would have been okay, going into maybe some kind of like maybe public relations journalism. So I went to college, actually Florida A&M University. I went and studied PR in a journalism school. So I started writing articles and editing videos and doing designs. I was like, okay, this would be great. Like, I'll be a journalist and I'll do communications. And then my professor's like, "Hey, journalists don't make any money." So I'm like, man, there's got to be a way where I can translate my passions into like something where I can actually provide for a family at someday. So literally, this is my
Yeah.
adolescent thinking, right? Is okay. Well, so I got lucky, man. One summer, I interned for Bell Helicopter Textron, and they just placed me in the marketing department. And so I got exposed to this idea that you could bring thoughts, ideas, words together to communicate stories, and this idea of storytelling. And so from then, every summer during college, I started to just intern in these
Mhm.
marketing departments of various companies. And so I didn't see it at the time. I never proactively pursued marketing. It was just more of an interest. And so I always was creative, always inspired by storytelling. And then I saw how the tools of stage, the tools of writing articles or producing videos on campus at school, those are transferable immediately to marketing. And so it gave me kind of a leg up. And so now I can look back and see the gift of storytelling and creativity was actually kind of that path that God opened to me. And so after college, I got a chance to intern and then get into full-time employment with Foot Locker. And so, I'm out of school. I'm working on the N1 mixtape tour at the time.
Uh,
This is 1998 when I graduated high school, 2002 from college. So N1 mixtape tour.
yes.
I'm hanging out with athletes and artists, entertainers. I mean, this is my dream job. So I moved from, Florida to New York, and I start this career in advertising and marketing. So I'm Foot Locker to Kate Spade, and just kind of doing my own thing really and winning awards. And then I had a period of time where I rose really fast really quickly. So
Yeah.
most of my jobs, I was the youngest person in the role or the department, and I'd start feeling myself. So I definitely had some periods of time where God had to lay the smack down and humble me, because I thought I was the man. I was the messiah of marketing. And so definitely had some periods when I started my own company where God had to show me just how good I could do without him. And so, I'm very fortunate to kind of have learned from some of those things. But marketing was just kind of the thing that I fell into. I can't say, like I said, I chased it. It just became kind of a path that opened up out of my creativity.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that. I love seeing that, that thread where these giftings, like how do I use these giftings? One thread I want to weave through your story though as we go is like God. Where does God factor into all this? Because you grew up in the church, like you
Yeah.
talked about Reverend Parker, and then so how did God sort of factor into those years as you're like kind of becoming a big deal and getting the awards and all that stuff?
It's good, man. It's interesting because I grew up, and this is maybe the PK story, or several PKs, preachers' kids, is I grew up in church. I was in church 4, if not 5 times a week. So I grew up knowing scripture. I grew up knowing the rhythm of church, the sound of church. I grew up knowing the stories. So I knew how to do church. I grew up in a missionary Baptist church, which, it's right. I grew up in a church actually right here. It's 20 miles from where I am today. And so I grew up knowing church, but I can't say I grew up knowing Christ, meaning I knew how to play church, the
Mm,
theater of church, but I can't say my heart was really committed to God's work and his kingdom. And so, I was faithful enough to, perform, but I went to college. I was kind of out of it. And so
yeah.
I honestly did not pursue and make a decision to give Christ my life until I was probably 23, 24 years old, when again, a chief failure officer. I'm a CFO. I invent new ways to fail at things, and I failed at a lot of things. And so I pursued the life I wanted to have. Growing up, with 8 people in the family on the south side of Fort Worth, Texas, in the '90s. If you know anything about Texas in this area, that was not the place you wanted to live in the '90s. And so I knew, to escape poverty, I knew I needed to hustle, right? And so I honestly became a workaholic. I became a successaholic. And so I knew that if I could put these things together and make more money, I could escape the hood, but I could also, escape kind of the cage of my parents and their legalism as I experienced it at that age,
Yeah.
their kind of religious traditional upbringing. And so I got off to do my own thing. And so God really became this constant companion to me, probably in my early 20s when, I reached a point. I was living in New Jersey, and I'll never forget this story where I got everything I wanted. I got the job I wanted. I was winning awards. I was in Black Enterprise magazine. I'm getting honored. People are flying in to attend these award ceremonies. There's a Black Enterprise issue. Um, it's like me, it's Adrian Parker, Tyler Perry, and like Jay-Z on the same page, right? So that's my claim to fame. Like, oh my gosh, like I
That's
was in
amazing.
our and Nick Cannon, right? I mean, like, oh my gosh, like I'm the hottest Black people doing their thing. I was among that number
Yeah.
early in life. I remember like about the same year that article came out, I was miserable.
Mm.
I had the car I wanted, had the girlfriend I wanted at the time. And I realized that I had just amassed this, I call it this landfill of sin. I was just so steeped in shame from what I had done, from the people I'd hurt. I was living for myself, living for my
Mm.
own desires, my own cravings, living for my own culture, building my own kind of success that was the opposite of what I experienced when I was growing up, but
Yeah.
very much, not better. Right. And so I just remember in that moment, breaking down, calling out to God at this little table in my little apartment in New Jersey. And I just remember the peace and the forgiveness and the love of Jesus that's coming over me, unlike anything I've ever experienced. Grew up in church my whole life, but I never experienced this feeling of forgiveness, of wholeness. And the moment when I treated him like trash and I could admit it, he reminded me that I was his treasure. And so that began probably my pivot to like, okay, this is real. I've been learning about it, but now it began this kind of long journey, this lifelong journey to really pursuing Christ and really know Jesus as he is, not as I had learned him to be or as I had hoped him to be.
Yeah. I love that story. You're a storyteller. I mean, great stories. I
I'm
love your
trying. I'm
stories.
trying.
You're good. You're good. I love that story. And I'm intrigued, like having grown up in church, right? Like, I don't know. I think you kind of assume your kids are kind of getting it and all that stuff. And, I wouldn't say that, like, I reflect on this for myself, raising PKs, right? Like, and it's interesting to me that you had to go experience all the stuff. I mean, there's like a prodigal sort of story in that in some ways. And the conversion experience that you had was not because of a church, because necessarily something did. It was almost like a remembrance of like all this stuff that was instilled in you in the past. Is that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think I tell parents all the time now, right? People ask, "Hey, talk to my kid?" And I'm like, "Hey, there's seeds that are planted,
Mhm.
right?" And
Yeah.
so then the story and the parable of of the good seed, which is the good soil, right? The seed that is planted and rooted and grows is the seed that perseveres to produce a harvest. And
Mm.
so there's this idea that like the harvest might take a while, right? And so as a parent now, I can look back. I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old. I know these seeds I'm planting are going to have to persevere to
Yeah.
produce that harvest. And so it certainly was a fruit of things that were in me that I didn't know were in me. But people are so wired so differently, and so even for me, I'm the kid. I was the kid, and now I'm the adult. That I have to live it and learn it and experience it for myself. So you can't just tell me like the pot is hot. I have to know that the pot, my finger needs to learn that the pot is hot. You can't tell me like to just, hey, live on a budget. I need to experience being broke because I didn't have a budget. You can't just
Yeah.
tell me, that hey, stay off the street. I need to experience like the consequences and so for whatever reason, whether it's hard headed, stubborn, probably a mix of all those things, but I think my upbringing planted seeds, and I saw the love of my mom and my dad and my family in new ways now as an adult because they were very strict. Like I said, I grew up in a neighborhood that wasn't very kind to anyone of color for sure. But it's I grew up in a neighborhood that's 76104. It's south side of Fort Worth. It's the has the lowest life expectancy in the whole
Mm.
state of Texas. So
Wow.
people in my neighborhood growing up live 15 years shorter than
Mm.
the neighborhood I live now. We're only 20 miles away, but we're that's 15 years of life you lose just by living in this neighborhood. And oftentimes in our country, your zip code actually dictates your education, your tax bracket, all of your achievement because of where we live. And so for me, that kind of idea that my parents had really been covering me this whole time and protecting me, like I couldn't see it at that time, and
Yeah.
isn't that the gospel story?
Mm.
It's the good story of a people, right, who keep turning away from God. He keeps forgiving and coming back, right? And this,
Yeah.
the prodigal son, he puts his ring on, puts his robe on, and restores him to his identity, reminds him of who he is. And so I've needed that several times. I like to say that was the one time I needed it. Nah, bro. Like we could do 5 more episodes of the lost son coming back. And so no, I'm very. I think I'm at the point in my career, in my life, though, where I I can no longer tell my story. I can't give speeches or keynotes or write blog posts. I can't do any of that without telling the story of what God has done. And so I used to
Mm.
be able to like talk about work and success and give advice and be a motivational speaker. And now I'm like, none of that's true without God as a part of at least my story. And so that's something I'm kind of relearning, is that God has been there the whole time.
Yeah, that's so good. I want to take a little detour there,
Okay.
if you don't mind. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, right? Coming from ministry into the corporate world, I've been very reticent to talk much about my faith, like
Yeah.
in corporate settings, right? Because I don't want to be the weirdo, or something like that. I don't know corporate culture well enough to know how out of bounds that is. I guess what would be your advice for Christians in the workplace and how to sort of balance that?
Yeah, I know it can be fraught with missteps because, at least in our culture, in our context, called the American corporate workplace, um, many things that we do, many things that we learn, are actually, I'd say, the opposite of the gospel, right?
Mm.
And so I remember for me, if you took there's this test online, you can Google like workaholic test, like, am I a workaholic? Which workaholism is a real thing. You can diagnose it. Like, you would read a list of workaholic attributes as things to aspire to in
Yeah,
our work. I mean, you're like, oh no,
right.
no, yeah, that's the person I want to hire, right?
Yeah.
And so in many ways, your Christian virtues and your Christian values don't really mesh with how we're being groomed to work. I was brought up in school and I did some certificate study at SMU Business School, spent 18 months at Harvard Business School, learning from the best business leaders in the world, and not many are talking about honoring your family and faith and trying to keep your family first and not overwork and trust and forgiveness and grace in the workplace. And so for me, it honestly took this really this journey of learning that work, worship, and service are really all the same thing.
Mm.
And so I think my advice would be, you can't compartmentalize things that God has designed to all be one thing, right? And so work, worship, even the Hebrew word avoda for work, worship, work, like it was the same. It was a seamless, integrated
Yeah.
lifestyle where I work and then I and worship, and my work and my worship kind of go hand in hand. I think for us, the trap is that we think we work Monday through Friday, and then I hang out with my family on maybe Saturday, then I worship on a Sunday. And that trap keeps us looking at the margins versus looking at the full picture. And so the probably the biggest advice, or evidence, I say evidence that I've seen, is being integrate your life and not being afraid to kind of share your story. I think we're so caught up in the cult of experts where everybody's an expert that it's hard to find people who can share their honest warts, scars, and
Mhm.
scabs. And so for me, I've learned I that's my niche, is like, no, tell your failure, tell your scars, tell your pain. That to me has honestly been a better magnet for telling about God than telling people how great I am. Oh, and God bless me. I'm the president of this company now, and God has just called me to this position. And if you just pray and study, you'll be like me. No, like I don't need any more of that content. And I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm saying it's incomplete. It's an incomplete story.
Mhm.
And so I think part of our faith journey is telling how much we need him, how much I depend on him. And then from there, being able to really have your work, your worship, and your service all be a part of an integrated life and sharing who you are as a person and who he is as your God versus a version of you that you hope that they would admire, you know?
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Yes, and amen. I love that. That is super helpful. And I think a good lesson to all of us kind of out in that workforce, trying to balance those things or bring them together.
Yeah.
Like you said, right? It's not a balance. It's a completion, right? Bringing them all together. Yeah. Yeah. Let's jump back on the story train though, because I
Yeah.
feel like we're gonna hit one of these CFO, chief failure officer, stories pretty quick here. So you're a big deal, New York, come to Jesus moment, and then let's jump back on that train. What kind of happens next?
Yeah, I mean, so I remember at that time, like I said, I'm in my kind of early, probably 23, 24 at this time, where I made a decision to actually pursue and follow God. And actually, like, I went to church, right? Not for the girls or not because my mom and dad wanted me to. I went to church to actually, like, I needed to be among God's people. It was just
Yeah.
it was a control, alt, delete. It was a hard reset, really, on my faith at that time, and started to kind of apply these principles and start going out less and kind of, my whole life shifted. So I am, and working in New York City, living in New Jersey. Everything you could think of is available to you, and I'm spending more time in the Word, more time with church, my youth group, at the time, and so things started to change quickly for me. But I remember I went through this phase of, it's called, Michael Gerber calls it the entrepreneurial seizure, right? Where hey, I'm so good at marketing, I should start a business that does marketing, right? I'm a stronger Christian now. I think God's calling me to, greener pasture. So I'm going to start a marketing agency. And anyone who's ever launched a business knows that, just because you can bake a cake doesn't mean you should run a bakery.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, baking a cake and running a bakery are absolutely two totally different
Yep.
things. And so me and my kind of youthful naivete and ignorance, I started a marketing agency. I moved back to Texas, which I do believe was a God calling and a God invitation, because that wasn't in my radar at all. And over
Mm.
time, I kept kind of getting these signals through sermons, through people, through chance interactions. It was time to move back to Texas. So I moved back to Texas. I started my own marketing agency, aptly called the Parker Marketing Group.
There you
My
go.
tagline was smarter marketing for small business, right?
Yeah.
And so my whole agenda, my goal was to translate the Fortune 500 marketing strategies I had learned and developed and implemented on behalf of big brands to local businesses in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and also to retail accounts. And I started off hot. Like my first year, I was killing it, making good money. I had translated some of my retail contacts into clients. I had a little office in Irving, Texas. I drove my little Jaguar, right? So this whole time I'm going to church. I'm on it. I'm at Bible study. I'm wearing the suits. But now I can look back and laugh, because what happened was I had built this kind of religious, I won't say name it and claim it, but I definitely was in this kind of religious box of, what benefit can I get from Jesus if I follow his rules and commands and morals and ethics? Then the benefit will be to me that I could have a better life. So to me, it was a bargain, right? So
Yeah.
I had created bargain Jesus in my head. We're
Mm.
like, yeah, if I can get this for that, that's a good deal. So I can create the life I want by following Jesus. Like, and so over time, and like I said, that youthful naivete and God in his grace, he redeems all that, right? So none of that's lost, but I built this business. But long story short, the failure still happens, right? 2009, 10 hit, it's the Great Recession. Overnight, I lost clients, I lost accounts, people went bankrupt. And so overnight, I go from being this highfalutin entrepreneur, wearing a suit, driving this luxury car, in church telling people, hey, be like me, giving testimonies in church about my business success, right? Because I had baptized my workaholism, right? I had baptized my ego. Uh, and now I'm like, oh, here I am again. So guess what? I'm broke again. I'm like suffering and in pain again, right? And so I remember God just loving me back, right? Getting me back to like this. So I went through this process. I'd met my future wife at that time, girlfriend at that time, but future wife now. And so just started to just like trust God through this dark period where I had no money, y'all. Like I had to borrow money from my dad, and and I'm supposed to be this award-winning, marketer. But God, man, God has been so faithful through that journey. I wouldn't want to live it again, but the fruit of failure when He showed me again really led to everything I've done since then. This was about 2000, call it 2010. So the last 15 years, man, God has just shown out in so many ways. And so it's been interesting to kind of ride that wave of kind of like, man, I just keep failing. Because I keep depending on God for what I can get from Him.
Right.
And now to be in a place in this season of life to be like, the humility, and hey, God, like it's not my will, but yours be done. And this door that's open is not because I'm so smart and great, or because I prayed, or because I tithed, or because, I've been, hey, I'm not looking at porn and I'm not cheating on my wife and I read my Bible every day. So no, it's not that at
Yeah.
all. But
Yeah.
it takes time to get there. I don't know if there's a way for me, at least, to fast forward that faith journey. I think you have to learn to let go of the idols that you don't even know that you're trusting in.
Yeah, and that's so much of what God's doing in the background a lot of times in these like wilderness times, right? It's just like I don't know. He's so much less
Yeah.
concerned about what you're doing and all of that stuff and more sort of who you are, right? And what he's crafting in you. And that's tough. That is tough stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
No, it's not comfortable.
No, it's
Like
not.
I keep wanting, you might like, I want the formula. Like, this is how you. So it's like a workout plan. It's a
Yeah.
diet plan. It's a career path. Oh, do this, and then you get this. And so that's just my natural human wiring. But I think all of us are kind of wired for outcomes. But I will say this, especially our church does this well. I think what we often miss is the value of community.
Mm,
Oftentimes we're doing these journeys alone. I can look back and I have friends and family, but I'm on these journeys alone. And
yeah.
you can tell the stories I've told so far. I, I, I built, I started, I
Yeah.
won, I moved, and I was such a prominent part of my story early on. Whereas now I can see, oh no, there's a community of people and friends and family and people who I need. And so being a true part of the body of Christ, like my work impacts other people. I think that's been the blessing of humility has been seeing that we really are this tapestry more than just lip service. It really is like how you live a good life. It's like your relationships. And
Yeah.
so that's something that I would never want to let go of.
Mm, yeah. I love that. And bonus points for bringing up community. Always a good thing. So there you go. Okay. So kind of Adrian Parker marketing
Mhm.
has kind of officially shuttered at this point, right? And so it's time to start building back up, right, into corporate world. How did you go about sort of learning that humble lesson, and then sort of what were the next steps there?
Yeah, so I'm broke. I'm living literally week to week, existing on tortilla chips, peanut butter and jelly, and oatmeal. Right, I'm dating a first grade teacher. Right, and even though I should have been making way more. And it's funny. My wife Alicia, because she was always on it, like budgeting and planning and saving. So like, I'm okay. We're dating, and I know I want to marry her, but I cannot ask this woman to marry me without like my credit score was probably like, as empty as my gas tank was at that time. So it was okay, I gotta and so I just started reaching out to contacts, to people, getting advice to, hey, I want to get back into the workforce. And so, man, it's such a God thing where I got a call from an old chief marketing officer, an old CMO who I'd interned with and worked for right out of college. And it was at RadioShack. Rest in peace,
Yeah.
RadioShack,
Yeah.
the Shack at that time. And got a call. They were looking for someone to come in and launch social media. So, this is the early days of digital marketing, social media. And it's not because I was a social expert at all. I just got on Facebook maybe a year ago, right? So I didn't know anything about social media. They were just like, hey, I'll give you a year. This is the deal he made with me. I'll give you a year to launch social media at Radio Shack. If you mess it up, we'll just move you to some brand role. I know you'll do well. So they just knew that, oh, here's a guy. He's smart enough, and probably an entrepreneurial piece, right? Being
Yeah.
able to be kind of scrappy and innovative and transformational, he'll figure it out. Or if he doesn't, we'll just put him in some corporate role and it'll be okay. So for them, they're like, hey, so they gave me 1 year. I had $1 million budget, I think, at that time. I had no team. I think I had an agency. And they just set me in this little cube, right? I remember the first day of work, there's a book, it's called Social Media for Dummies, right? Was on my desk. And it was a joke. I was like, man, I mean, I really did need it because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really don't know social media. So I literally spent the first year learning, reading articles, learning from our agency, and just soaking it all in. Meeting with, I could meet you at that time. It was early days, so I met with Facebook. I had barbecue with our Facebook rep. The CEO of Twitter, you could email him, Dick Costello at the time. Learning Foursquare, that was the location app, and
Yeah.
all these apps. And so I spent a year just like soaking all this up, right? And I'm also, getting a W-2 income, so now I can propose to my wife, right?
Right.
I will tell this story because I remember they called me with the job offer, right? And like their offer for being a social media manager was more than I had made, in my life at that time. I remember having to act, oh yeah, having to negotiate like it wasn't a big deal. I remember getting off the phone and like running around my house because, oh yes, like I'll have insurance and I can propose to my wife and like all these things as well. And so, but after that first year, things just started to click.
Mm.
Like it all just clicked where like the same mindset that was writing articles for the FAMU magazine, the same mindset that was hustling to try to get clients from my agency. I could see how all those, I mean, I worked at Foot Action before they went bankrupt and got acquired by Foot Locker, right? I had my own agency that shuttered after 3 years. All these pieces though, I could start putting them together, and those were actually the very tools you needed to succeed in social media at that time.
Yeah.
And so like it all just clicked. I started to do campaigns and win award. I mean, it just started, but it wasn't because of me. It was I had a team, I got to hire people. And so that's when I became a leader. I started to actually lead teams and lead people because I knew I needed them, right? My agency was all about me, the Parker marketing group. And so Radio Shack really this time taught me this season of dependency, of learning, of being a steward and a student versus trying to be kind of the man, the know-it-all. And so I became a steward of marketing. I became a student of social and digital marketing practices. And I mean, just shot off from there. Like from there, I went to Intuit. I was the head of global social media and technology for our accounting professionals division. I remember seeing that job on LinkedIn and being, oh, I'm gonna go get an MBA so I can apply for that job. That looks cool. 2 weeks later, I get a call about that job. Like, oh wow. And then 2 years into it, I get a call from, the former CMO. Say, hey, come be the VP of digital at Patron Tequila. It's like, what? I mean, it all just it took off. So it's only my first 10 years took off, but it was all about me. The
Mm.
second kind of wave, things that God opened doors to career opportunities and promotions. But the unlock was learning and leaning on people and knowing it ain't about me, knowing failure. So I needed those bumps to
Yeah.
get to kind of where I was now and kind of learning to love people and lead them well versus using them as kind of cogs in my transactional wheel to fulfill my own desires.
Yeah, I love that distinction because we talk a lot about using connections to kind of get ahead, and I love the distinction between using them as like transactional or seeing
Yeah.
them really as people. Like how are we seeing these relationships really? Because I think I tend to see people as transactional. I think we all do. It's easy to get caught in that trap, right? And I love that distinction for sure. That's good stuff. Okay, so we get to Patron tequila, right? And just moving and shaking, and again, this big deal, right? I mean, you're an
Yeah.
executive in the spirits industry, and let's jump off on the story from there. Then,
Yeah, the Petroleum, I went from, tax software to tequila. And
yeah,
it wasn't because I was qualified from a spirits perspective. It was because, I think that transformational leadership, that ability to kind of launch new teams, new divisions really has become the hallmark of my career.
yeah,
Right. It's been like transformation and leading kind of and starting new things. But two things became readily important at that time. It became like transformation can start at the top, but it can't stay there. Right. So I couldn't necessarily just be an executive in the ivory tower. I had to lead teams and people. And but two, every corporate problem or every problem has a people solution. And so
Mm.
I really did start to learn because I didn't know spirits. I didn't know tax software. I didn't RadioShack. I didn't know cell phones and batteries. Like, but I knew people, right? So the
Mm.
unlock was I was never the subject matter expert in any of the companies I've been at, right? Never the guy, oh, he's the tax guy. I hate taxes. Now I do like tequila and bourbon and cognac now,
Yeah.
but I didn't know anything, so
Right.
I wasn't the knowledge expert or the source of knowledge, but the ability to connect in constellations. Like constellation is when you connect stars, billions of stars in the sky. We can't name any of them, but I could show you the Big Dipper. I could show you Orion's belt. And so my job literally became to connect the dots to talented people who are already doing amazing work. And so for Patron, leading digital and then leading digital and experience to brand marketing. And so I progressively every 18 months to 2 years was promoted into these roles. And at that time, I'm starting a new family, right? So at Patron, I think I had our third kid. And so I'm, trying to be a good husband, trying to, be a father that's healthy. I'm actively involved in church at that time
Yeah.
and kind of just really trying to build a good Christian life, And so, but definitely there were moments where I brought my faith to work. And so I know maybe the elephant in the room was like a Christian leader, pastor's kid at tequila company, right? Like, how does that really work?
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Can I
Yeah.
apply to jobs like that? And so I think I struggled. It never was an issue with people I was at church with, but I definitely struggled with like, man, like all this time, effort, energy I'm spending in this industry. Is that where you really want me to be? Right? Because you think about alcoholism and abuse and all these things that people do. And so, but man, was so favor filled to me because there's so many moments with my coworkers where I'm like talking about God or praying with them or praying for them. And people even challenging faith and being, man, you've caused me to rethink because,
Yeah.
and it's spirits, by definition, mostly a secular industry. And so there are many people who are very adverse to Jesus' teachings, God, the Bible. Some of that is outdated and like it doesn't even, they don't coexist. But being able to be in those places and rooms and have those conversations with people and lead, be a servant leader,
Mm.
in those spaces, I think was really a bright spot for me. But also, I could see God at work in these people's lives, and so that was really really rewarding to be a part of kind of some of those stories and building this brand. And but it taught me real leadership, meaning at scale. So I go from I got a $1.2 billion P&L. 100-person team, $150 million budget. I mean, so I learned to lead at scale. You
Yeah.
like big ideas, big teams, big marketing, but not about me, right? So the Adrian, who was all about himself, wouldn't have worked because it wasn't necessarily about me. And so, man,
Mm.
God showed up in several many ways. And then Patron got acquired in 2018 by Bacardi, one of the largest privately owned spirits companies. So I stayed on 3 years after that to help with that integration, things like that. So none of this was, I never wanted it. I never pursued it. God calls us different ways. And I think God called me by path. Like a door opens and just like, really? And then you kind of
Yeah.
walk through it. And then these paths just keep opening. Like 5 years ago, if you had told me I would be an ordained minister at the well, like, no, like I actually am not. I'm actually walking the other way. I'm
Yeah.
not going to do that. I would have said I'm not
Yeah.
actively doing that. And then path, path,
Mm.
path, and so that continues to be, I think a theme for me is just like these paths and these people. But God doesn't necessarily call me to the position as much as He calls me to a person. To Jesus, and
Yeah.
through Jesus connecting me to people to be a part of the work He's already doing, in somebody's life. And so that's been a humble lesson I'm continuing to relearn.
Yeah. No, that's good. I love I love the wisdom and the connections and all that. And I guess we're getting to another major sort of milestone. Can we then talk about COVID and
Oh,
some of the changes that come with with COVID here.
Oh man, I'm having to
I'm
I'm
sorry.
gonna have
I'm
to I'm,
sorry.
I'm gonna have to do another therapy session with my I think Shane and his he had
Yeah.
a shout out really for, hey, like, every human will need therapy in
Yeah.
their life, and
Yeah.
probably forgot how he said it, but there's probably considerable amounts of therapy and mental health resources you will need to navigate this
Yeah.
thing we call life. I remember saying, man, amen. Because man, COVID brought all of us to our knees. And
Yeah.
so COVID hits. I'm the global head of marketing at Patron Tequila. Our parent company's doing their thing. I mean, I'm making more money than I ever thought I'd make in my life. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm traveling the globe before COVID. You know, we're that family that has to, spend kind of 3 or 4 weeks a time out of the country. So we kind of plant in Mexico. Then we're in Bermuda for the summer. And I'm just living this life that this corporate executive life, and my family's doing really well. But I'll be honest, towards the end, but right before COVID, I was miserable because I think I had boxed myself into the head. I started to read my own headlines a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I'm the only, African American, at this level. And, you can count the number of black folks in our industry on the one hand. Now
Yeah.
you could probably count it on one finger, right? And so
Right.
there wasn't a lot of leaders there. And, 2020 hits and COVID, right? And so it's a George Floyd. And so maybe the pressure I put on myself or expectation I felt from organizations was that, hey, you're a black man. I was at a majority kind of white church. So,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be Martin Luther King at church, and I'm trying to be Martin Luther King at work, and oh, God's, prepared me. And there were some great things that came out of it, but I was exhausted and tired, and I was empty. And so when COVID hit, it certainly was a wake up call for me, because overnight, we went from caring about cases of tequila to like, hey, like, are you okay? I had coworkers that lost both parents. They're
Mhm.
losing family members, right? And so we're just trying to love on each other. I'm sending prayers, and I'm sending, Clorox wipes to people, literally mailing, like, hey, what do you need? And we're trying to get money together for people. And so, man, that's when it really activated for me, man. It's not about tequila at all.
Yeah.
Right. I really could care how much we sell that. Like, it's about the people and this team. And so being able to be a part of that. So I stayed another year. 2021, I decided to resign. I'd probably stayed a year or two too long in that
Mhm.
position. There are times when you can feel it's time to go, and so it was time to go to the next adventure. So my plan was to spend some time writing and leading, and kind of maybe, I'm a writer who is not yet a published author. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the headline here, and I'm still not a published author. My wife will listen to this and tell you, yes, it's 5 years later, and you still haven't written that book. But the goal was to take some time off and write, and just take some time off. Well, during that time of leaving Patron, I got this kind of job offer that came through to be a CMO at a health tech company. And they had just IPO'd, and so, gosh, I didn't really want the job, but after they show you what you could make, and I said yes, and then 30 days later, I was like, oh, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
It's one of those head fake jobs, and
Mhm.
everybody, has maybe experienced that. So I resigned from that role after 30 days. My kids still remind me, yeah, you resigned after 30 days, Dad. Like, almost like my quitter, and it's like, but I knew better than to just force it,
Mm.
right? So I ended up, 2021. I took a year off. I started therapy. I started 2 years of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Start to unlearn, man. I had so much of my value was wrapped into my title and my
Yeah.
position. And I can look back now and see these times when I literally had times of maybe suicidal ideation or consideration, or times when I didn't necessarily maybe want to die, but I didn't see the value in living, solely tied to what I was doing. And I remember that from a young age. In middle school, like, I remember my first D. I got a D because Miss Thompson, like, I think she called my name to turn in an assignment, and I didn't. I had it, but I was talking, and I didn't turn it in. So to teach me a lesson, she gave me a D on my report card. I remember staring at the D as a middle schooler, right? And like, I don't know if I want to. I mean, what? That's early, right? And so, but there's all these bruises, these mental shortcuts I had created to try to be successful, that I had never really delved into. So therapy was 2 years, 2.5 years, I think, was just like relearning my value
Mm.
and like unpacking some of these things, these lies, these half truths that I had committed to, these bad habits, these hangups. And so giving me mental tools and systems and skills to just be healthy. And so that was it. That was worth a year off, totally. And then, about a year after that, I took some writing classes. I taught my kids how to ride bikes. I made pancakes. Literally, I took a year.
Yeah.
For a year, I think our gross income, if I'm just being totally transparent, I have to look at, but I think we might have made like $16,000 in 2022 or 23. Like, look, we made no money and we were fine. Like God covered us. I took a year off, y'all. I did not do anything. I made no money. My wife was volunteering and working at the church. My wife worked at the church. My wife is our breadwinner. I made no money. And so
Yeah.
in many ways, I call it pre-tirement. I needed time to not be judged or valued based on income and title. I mean, people would ask me, "Hey, what do you do? What do you want to do? What do you do?" And I don't know. I didn't have an answer. I didn't feel like hustling. It was just, honestly, it was just an extended sabbatical to get my mind and my spirit right. But I needed that professional pause to make a personal pivot. I
Mhm.
need to let go of trying to succeed on my own rules and define success my way, which is a common theme in my life. You can see, like, man, like I keep having to make these failure related obstacles to then learn what God is already doing. And so over time, I started to consult, get a call from the Fawn Weaver, who's the CEO of Uncle Nearest. Many people might have read her book Love and Whiskey, and we had been kind of like fans of each other for a while, but never connected. And so from my my year and a half off, I started to consult for Uncle Nearest, just kind of like part time, just consulting on some things, and then that kind of had bloomed into a full time role that I'm doing now to help them establish a cognac company and launch their cognac product in the United States. And that's been such a rewarding project to work alongside people who are filled with faith. I mean, man, I'm leading Bible study in Cognac, right? We're talking about Bible and we're walking through the book of Amos, right? And so it's this weird kind of paradox of like, we're in the spirits industry, but I'm working with so many believers that like our faith and our work and our strategy and our Bible study, our scripture and our business strategy, they all just kind of integrate. And so
Yeah.
it's this really rewarding way to work that has been very not only I think illuminating to hey how you can do work and life and faith together, but also that you don't have to code switch. You don't need a church version of Curry and a work version of Curry and then a home version of Curry. Like Jesus was who he was at all times. In fact, he never got too busy to serve people. He got busy serving people and it attached to his work, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, there's this faith fall that happens when you can like make those delineations to say, no, I don't need to be a different me because that's out of fear. That's out of, I think you're trying to conform to something, but I'm not conforming to what I think I should be. I'm just being who I'm called to be. But I'm 45 years old, so it's taken therapy, time, and lots of work to get there. So I don't
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a fast forward button though. I don't know what you would say to that. Like, is
No.
there a way to skip to that part?
No.
Because like, why do I have to go through all that?
Yeah, it's the only way to learn. I think in so many ways we're all like you're just a little more forthright that we all have to touch the stove to
Yeah,
understand it's hot. I mean,
yeah,
we all just have to experience it, and like God refines slowly. Like the refining process takes a lot of heat, fire, and it takes a lot of time, and that's what God's doing to us. He's seeing a long view that we just can't see. And so I love that you can see that just so
yeah,
planted in your story over this time. I want to get into that. God, there's so many places I want to go. I love talking about all this stuff. There's so many places I want to go. But before we get there, can you give the quick rundown? What is Uncle Nearest? Like what separates it from all the other spirits out there? And what is your role in that? How do you play into that?
Oh yeah, so Uncle Nearest is this amazing kind of bourbon whiskey company. If you don't know anything about bourbon or whiskey, one thing you will know is there's this brand, one of the most valuable spirits brand in the world is a brand called Jack Daniels, right? So many people know that it's literally one of the most valuable and famous spirits brand in the world. But most people, this forgotten story is that there is a man who taught Jack Daniels, how to make Tennessee whiskey. And the way to make Tennessee whiskey is called the Lincoln County process. And in 1856, this formerly enslaved man named Uncle Nearest began to perfect not only the Lincoln County process, which was a way of you filtering and distilling whiskey through sugar maple charcoal, right? So you filter the whiskey to take out some of the harshness and make it sweeter and smoother, which was a practice that Uncle Nearest learned and brought over from his ancestors from Africa, right? So Jack Daniels, right, this award-winning whiskey, actually learned his whole process from this black man
Yep.
named Nearest Green, Uncle
Mm-hmm.
Nearest. And many people hear that story and think, oh, he had to. At that time, 1800s, he was a slave. No, they were friends. Uncle Nearest was a mentor to Jack Daniels. They honored each other. They loved each other. They respected each other. And so this little known story was got kind of forgotten. If you weren't from Middle Tennessee, you kind of didn't know that Jack Daniels is actually the product of the first master distiller of Jack Daniels was a black man named Uncle Nearest. And so my CEO and my boss, Fawn Weaver, discovered this story around 2016, 2017. This article comes out that explains, oh, wow, this thing we all know and love is actually the product of this black man. But it's not a story of oppression or exploitation. It's a story of love. And so she ends up like learning all these things about the story. She actually moves from LA to Shelbyville, Tennessee to
Yeah.
learn this story, to work with his descendants. So Uncle Nearest, right, his descendants over time, they're all, doing their own job. Some of them work for Jack Daniels, but the Jack Daniels descendants, Jack Daniels is now owned by Brown Forman. It's a big company. It's a
Yep.
multi-billion-dollar company. And so Fawn, my boss, decided the best way to honor the legacy of this formerly enslaved man who brought so much to the world through his techniques wasn't a movie. It wasn't a book at the time. It was a bottle. And so she makes Uncle Nearest Tennessee whiskey and bourbon. And she not only does she make it, she finds the great great granddaughter of Uncle Nearest to be the master distiller, Victoria Edie Butler. And y'all, this bourbon, one of the most award winning every year. She's been the master blender of the year 3-4 times in a row. So it's an amazing product that actually has an amazing story. And so she didn't start Uncle Nearest, the company. She's not using the story of Uncle Nearest to sell whiskey. She's using the whiskey to tell the story,
Yeah.
right? And we all need these good stories of unity and respect and love. And so that company, it's not even 10 years old yet. And so it's based in Tennessee. And so I came on about 2 years ago to continue that legacy by launching a cognac. So cognac is a great base spirit. Cognac can only be made in Cognac, France. There's actually a place called Cognac in France, like Champagne, where you make and distill cognac. And cognac is a very popular aged spirit. And so we are launching a cognac brand that sits alongside Uncle Nearest. It's a very similar story of love, legacy, respect. And black folk, we love some cognac. In the States, like we drink
Yeah.
more than half of all
Yeah.
cognac comes to the US. And black people, and actually black, brown, and Asians
Mm.
drink almost 75% of the cognac. So people of color love cognac, but we don't necessarily own or operate or found very
Yep.
many cognacs. And so
Yep.
part of our goal is to just not only tell the story of the spirit, the land, the agricultural, the process, but also honor these people who have done it and give respect to the families who have dedicated their lives to this great base product. And so it really is a cool story of redemption,
Yeah.
of reclamation, of reconciliation, but also telling this story of this product.
Yeah, I love it so much. And like you said, Love and Whiskey is a book that about the founding, her story of finding this story and building this brand, Fawn Weavers. It's incredible. I was just thinking even before this interview, as I was prepping a little bit, just how a lot of times the Black American story we tell is the civil rights story,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really important story, right? I mean, everybody should be educating themselves on the civil rights movement and the importance of it. We very rarely tell stories, though, of Black excellence in America. Would you agree with that?
Well, I'd say we selectively tell stories of
Okay.
Black
Okay.
excellence.
Fair.
So I'd say Black stories of Black excellence are often sold to the mass population as the antidote, right? So
Mm.
the antidote for racism or segregation or Jim Crow was be excellent, right? And so you
Right.
had a generation. So think about how I even introduced myself. It was, I'm the son of one of the first Black graduates of the Texas Tech engineering program.
Mm.
My dad had to be that good to get into that college, right?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
grandfather was a sharecropper, right? Who worked for minimal pennies and wages for a white family who had to work his butt off, right, to become a scientist, you know. And so oftentimes we grow up, Black excellence becomes a souvenir to inspire us to this level of excellence, but it also mollifies, it also makes us safer in white spaces, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like in my neighborhood, I'm one of the only kind of Black families here, but I'm safer if I'm excellent, right? So I'm
Yeah.
safer. I'm more acceptable if I'm excellent, if I'm good. So I think oftentimes our stories of Black excellence, right? So we think about the Oprahs, the LeBrons, the Jay-Z's, like we can all name the Black excellence, but if you look at the people next who their neighbors, let's go with their neighbors. Their neighbors is like, it's probably a insurance salesman, a corn syrup salesman, and somebody that, you know, runs their dad's auto, like you know. And so
Yeah.
oftentimes I think for me, I did fall into the trap of my excellence, my I can outwork racism or I can
Yeah.
outwork oppression. And so, and I, for a while I thought I did, but then of course you get into the, no matter what your role is, you're in these high places in these rooms, I'm the only one at the room. I'm like, oh no, like now I don't know if I should say it this way. There are times when my presence in the room was seen as, oh, I'm one of them. And I almost gave other people permission. My excellence aligned me with them in a way that it didn't help how they perceive Black people. It just meant, oh, Adrian's special, but it didn't necessarily open their eyes or aperture or awareness that no, Adrian's just a human and all people of color deserve dignity, respect, and agency. And so I kind of had a moment in my career, my life, in my church that we were at, and the corporation I was at, where I thought I was a part of the problem. My excellence was what they used to say, oh, be like Adrian, while
Mm.
ignoring all the ways that they were oppressing or contributing to systems that allow people to not be like Adrian. So that's a whole other podcast. But man, it's such a mind warp that I'm still processing.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. I can't say thanks enough for making that distinction, because even in your story, it can be like, well, people on the south side of Fort Worth, be like Adrian and sort of like, pull yourself up and
Yep.
do the thing. So as a white person, a lot of times I can alleviate myself from like even believing racism is a thing, or I can alleviate that guilt by saying, hey, look, all you have to do is be like Adrian and get out. And
Yeah.
just couldn't be further from the truth. There's these systems that are still alive and well, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, and they're still there. And I get to your original point, like Black excellence, like man, there's so much of it around, but oftentimes the stories of maybe deviance or debauchery, or maybe it's like urban or hip hop. There's these stories. If you look at like Netflix, right? If you look at kind of Netflix has the categories, right? If you look at like Black stories,
Yeah.
man, like the Black stories are all like slave, 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 civil rights, slave, hood,
Yeah.
gang.
Compton.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
all like
Yeah.
adversity, deficiency. It's so this deficiency story,
Yeah.
and the stories of civil rights and Jim Crow and slavery. Those are historically accurate. So they're not wrong, but it's an unfinished story. America is an unfinished story, and I think if we focus on those without getting the depth and the texture of Black humanity, we miss it. right? And so, black joy, black love, black, like, me and my wife make laugh all the time because we'll find like a good black show that has nothing to do with like slavery or civil rights or shooting each other. And I love that show. And then it gets canceled, right? So it's like, I don't know, like maybe there needs to be a market for like, man, is there, just like, man, a fuller spectrum of black or content for people of color where you can have that. But in many ways, I think we're all learning that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. So good. Are you okay on time?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I have one more sort of like really, I think an important thing I want to ask you about, because you're in your story. I see such a juxtaposition, like pre-COVID, working at Patron, Adrian, right? Pre this, your hiatus to the post COVID Adrian, working for Uncle Nearest. In that, before that, you were in a predominantly white church, right? In a predominantly white company, right? And as George Floyd happens, and there's these kind of revolutions happening in the country, this awakening, you're kind of thrust into that. You have to be the spokesperson for that, right? And now it's almost completely flipped in your life, where you're at a diverse church, as a minister, right? At a company that crazy devalues diversity. And I don't know. I would love to hear you just kind of cook on the differences, or like, yeah, I would love for you to talk about that juxtaposition.
Yeah.
And I ask all this because I was just going back through your blog. You can find it adriandparker.com. Unfollow University. This is sort of your project of writing, right, during this little hiatus. And man, they're just such powerful unpacking of like what you were going through sort of before you stepped down. And I love thinking about how God was doing something that you could have never really imagined. So I just want to let you cook. Yeah.
Yeah, man. First thing that comes to my mind is I remember Esau McCulley, who probably, if you're a listener of Theology of Hustle, you know who Esau is, right?
Yep.
And it's a New Testament theologian, pastor, writer, just prolific. And he's a brother. He's a person of color, right? Man, he wrote a tweet. I think he's taking it down because I can never find. I took a screenshot because I know, Esau, if you ever watched this, I know you tweeted it because I have a screenshot of it. And I'm gonna paraphrase it, but he said this. He wrote this one tweet that kind of clicked for me. He said, "I am learning to, instead of trying to fight to be in places that don't want me, I'm learning to exist and be comfortable and be happy in places that celebrate me, that celebrate who I am naturally." And I was so conditioned for majority of my life to fight to be in tables and rooms and schools and ceremonies and conferences, and being the only one or the highest ranking one was a sign of respect. It was a badge of honor. It meant that I had made it. And so I began to live my life and my career for white acceptance. And it wasn't consciously, and it wasn't necessarily white acceptance as much as it was for cultural success. So, but oftentimes in America, success is adjacency to white America. I have white neighbors. I have, like my proximity to success, wealth, and whiteness is the mark of success. And it took COVID, the kind of that 2020 to 2021, where I had built the thing I thought was successful, and all those things fell apart. This church that I had contributed to, I had volunteered. My wife was a volunteer. I had done communion. I'd done Sunday school. I had taught. I'd done retreats. I had done Bible studies. I had led the classes for racial reconciliation. I was the poster child for a Black man in white spaces doing the real work of biblical reconciliation, and sitting in the meeting, and like seeing that race, not only was racism still present, racism was still flaming and active, and like nothing had changed. And so in many ways, maybe, and I wasn't hopeless, but I think there is this constructive hopelessness that shows you that more time in this place is not going to change the outcome. And so the same thing happened in my company. It was like, oh wow, like I'm the mouthpiece. Like I thought I was the I was an example to other Black, and there was a lot of African American employees who were like, man, like, thank you for being there. But I thought that if I could made it, there would be a whole pipeline of Black and brown women and men of color who would be after me. And when I left, all that fell apart, right? So it all gets dismantled, right? So I'm the only one who's fighting for these things. And so it became this idea of there are some people who are born and maybe bred or acclimated to fighting those things. And it's seasonal, but for me, right? So I'm not saying this is maybe biblical truth as much as it is just sharing my honest, kind of transparent story. Is I don't I couldn't be the only one fighting, right? And so now to be on the other side of that, to walk into a place where no matter what's going politically and socially, culturally, I can have a place where I can have a conversation with a coworker. And I mean, we all agree. We actually, Uncle Nearest, even our company, there's people on political spectrum, but it's a place where we have not centered American whiteness to the point where it's right for everything.
Right.
And so, or it's a church. The Well Church isn't a place where we have to center one culture or one ethnic group to the point where it becomes a standard. And so that's probably the difference. Is I'm in diverse places where, yeah, you can be Republican, you can be a Democrat, you could be an atheist. Like you can have these different beliefs, but we can all come together in common unity because of the grace of God. And so, to me, living out grace in my life now means being in places where my family can be accepted and supported, and we can accept and support other families in a way that truly builds community. Because you can't have unity without diversity. Like unity without diversity is uniformity. And so
Yeah.
these places that are built on uniformity, for me, are no longer where I want to be. I can visit, but I can't stay there, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, diversity is is a hallmark of I think God's work, God at work. And that doesn't mean these places are perfect, but it does mean that we're not centering one culture at the exclusion and at the detriment of another. And so
Mm.
I can't imagine a world where I go back to that willingly. Never say never. You know, I know brothers and sisters who have gone back to places to kind of help fight that battle. At this time, though, I don't think or believe that God's calling me to be that at this point. And I'm really just enjoying this community that we're getting to build together. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed Curry's family, the Blandfords. They're an amazing, I think, archetype of a diverse seeking family. Doesn't have to go to a diverse church. We're in Texas, so you can, there are plenty of white churches
That is,
that you
that is
pass
true.
by to get to this diverse church.
Yeah.
You don't have to, but you choose to. And so I
Mm.
appreciate people like
Mm.
that, who were able to kind of bring that unity and that perspective to life.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That means a lot. It means a lot to be part of this, the Well Church community, honestly, and um, get to participate in something like building something new,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of what you talk about is building your own table, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that so many times when we try to change like institutions that have operated in a certain way for a long time, that I mean, as much as we can sort of maybe like shift the institution in some ways, like a lot of times building new institutions is necessary in order to bring about new realities,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. And not that, like, there are some people who are suited for it. I
Yeah.
know some brothers who they're good. They're still in these places. They're
Yeah.
fighting the good fight, but they're not exhausted, or they don't get depressed by it.
Right.
So I think there's a wiring thing too.
Yeah.
And I forgot the lady that there's this kind of graphic I've seen. This infographic shows all the roles it takes to bring about equity, right?
Mm.
And there's people who are healers. There's people who are nurturers, people who are mentors, people who are fighters, they're agitators, they're in there agitating. There's people, and so there's enough room, right, in this
Yeah.
struggle to bring God's kingdom to earth, because we know how the battle's going to end anyway.
Yeah.
But God has blessed us with all these gifts, and so trying to work against your natural inclination or gifting, and for me, it isn't in the place. Not that God can't use you in the place that you're not necessarily gifted or naturally called, because I think God's design and my desire, definitely there's a Venn diagram there. um but yeah, I think instead of seeing that struggle as a badge of honor, I could see it as, hey, maybe I'm working against something that just isn't my time. And so my big thing is, man, our kids, right? So I probably won't see the fruit of some of the things I'm teaching or talking about, right?
Yeah.
But I'm crazy enough to believe that my kids or my kids' kids are going to be able to see the fruit of some of that. So even if I don't see it, I definitely feel like, oh, I have to fight, right? So I'm not giving up the fight, but I am saying, hey, I have to nurture and be a part of a different type of community to fight for the long term, right? And so
Yeah.
to me, that's the bigger blessing.
I love that. I love you articulating that because it is that like hope, right? We
Yeah,
do these things. We have kids and we raise up new generations because of hope, right? And the hope of what Jesus is doing and crafting a better future, right? Yeah, it's good.
amen.
Good stuff. All right. Well, Adrian, are you good jumping into the final two questions
Oh
as we
man, let's
wrap
do it,
up?
baby.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. All right. So my first question is, what is the strangest job that you have ever had?
I've had several jobs, but the strangest job I'd say was probably for one day. I was a what do you call it? 18-wheeler truck unpacker. So
Okay.
one day I worked at Roadway unpacking 18-wheelers in his warehouse. Hardest job I ever did.
Like
Only
by
last
hand, or were
Oh,
you
by hand.
work?
Yeah, yeah. We're these big old brothers. We're in there unpacking 18-wheeler boxes, right? I lasted I lasted one day. And then funny, that evening I got home, I was sore. I'm like, I was prepared to spend the whole summer doing that because I needed money, right? And
Yeah.
then that night I got home and had a call for internship where I instead of using my back, I could use my keyboard fingers. So I went right back to that corporate cubicle. So yeah, it's strange because I only lasted a day. But yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. Good stuff. Okay, so my final question then is, what is one piece of advice you would give to somebody looking to bring God's kingdom more into their work?
Ooh, this is probably somewhat controversial, and men typically push back on this a lot,
Okay. All
hard.
right.
But advice I would give for someone looking to bring God's kingdom to earth: leave work by 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Leave work by 5 o'clock or 5:30.
Yeah.
But here's the punchline: God is already at work, and I have spent my life working so many hours for so little results. I think back on I've lost weekends with my family. I missed actually my own birthday. I missed the anniversary. I almost missed my son's birthday, but I was there for the morning. I have missed so many moments and have coworkers who were successful who have missed entire sections of their
Mm.
families or their friends' lives to attain this symbol of success. But it's not real. Like there's only one person that can be a father to Caleb, Chloe, and Chandler. There's only one person that's called to be a husband for now, right? As long as I'm alive, to Alicia Parker. And so I have found the biggest blessing and reward, and this is not popular, in like doing your work and then stopping work.
Mm.
Like go home and leave that thing undone, leave that thing incomplete, and come back. And trusting God at work is harder than trusting God at home. And
Mm.
so like I'll leave my family for a week or two and go travel the world to sell a product and leave them without me. But man, the idea of like leaving work by 5 or 5:30 to get home to have a meaningful conversation around a table with my family and friends and like really or be available on the weekend to go to church and build community, right? And so all I'm saying is, as I have a very high pressure, high intense job, and I've had some crazy roles before. I would say the one thing I wish I had done earlier was find that alignment between my work life and stop giving the least to the people who mean the most. Because my faith at work oftentimes is not how much I work. God's not giving me a trophy for working 100 hours a week. No, like that's my lack of faith at work. And
Mm.
so faith at work to me has meant doing a good job, working with excellence, working with loving people, putting people first, praying for my coworkers, trying to be a good steward of the position, but not tending to overwork to the point where my work becomes my identity. So leave work by 5 p.m. Argue with Curry in the comments.
I'll go with that. Yeah, I'll go with that. No, I love that. I think that's such an important thing. And Adrian, thanks for your time, man. Thanks for your story. And thanks for teaching us some valuable wisdom today.
Thank you, man. I enjoy your gift for bringing people together. I enjoy this platform. I'm glad you're back into it. I look forward to kind of seeing future episodes. So humbled and honored to be a part of it, and can't wait to see what you have next as well, man.
Love it. Love it. Thanks so much for hanging out and listening to A Theology of Hustle. Make sure that you like and subscribe, all the things, and follow me at Theology of Hustle on Instagram. My hope is that this podcast just encourages you in your work, whatever that may be. So until next time, get out there and hustle.